Hey guys, we're back working on my 1986 or 87 Argo Magnum that I picked up recently. It did not run. The previous owner was ready to cut it up with a Sawzall and haul it to the dump. So I got it for a really sweet price. Follow along while we get this fuel system dialed in, make it so that it actually runs. In a recent video, put a little bit of effort into this thing. I got it to fire up and it really does run sweet. 10 minutes effort to have the thing moving under its own power, running off of the boat tank over here. That thing just, it's so difficult to start. That is absolutely sweet. You can hear how low it's idling. That's so the clutch doesn't engage and it makes it so that the gears don't grind too bad when you put it in gear. But it really does run nice. The problem we have is the fuel system is pretty bad. The main fuel tank is split. You can see that it's been leaking out of there. We've got some pretty grungy fuel lines, some pretty grungy looking fuel filters, and I think we need to make a few minor repairs here. Fuel tanks are available for these, but they're not cheap, of course, and I'd rather try and clean this one up and see if we can plastic weld this cracked seam and anywhere else that needs attention, and maybe get this one back up and running as is. Follow along while we make some progress on this. What I'm going to use to drain the fuel out of this thing is my Holt Industries vacuum sucker, and I bought this for doing oil changes on my Sea-Doo or anything else that needs to have fluids sucked out of something, and it works really well for doing oil changes. But I think we're going to try it out here on this raunchy old fuel, and definitely you can smell it. This is really bad stuff. I'll take a look on Amazon and see if I can find an equivalent that I can put an affiliate link on, and I'll put that down in the description. So what we've got here, we're capable of either evacuating, in which case that goes up, or dispensing. We don't want to dispense, we want to evacuate. So we lift the lever, and we don't have to keep pumping this the whole time. We just have to pump it enough that we get a vacuum going. Can't imagine that that's all the fuel that was in it. And we're down in the bottom. Doesn't look like there's much there. Ugh. Definitely it doesn't smell very good. And you can kind of see, at the bottom of the tank, there might be a sump in the bottom of that tank that there may still be a cup or two of fuel sitting in, but for the most part I think we've got it out, which is good. I thought there was like half a tank of fuel in there. We got a couple of cups. Yeah, you can see the tip of the rubber, how little wetness there is on that. Not the best lighting here, it's pretty harsh. As I suspected, there's a big, well, I shouldn't say big, but there's a sump that sticks down about like that in the bottom of the tank. And that is what is getting us right now. Okay, I think I'm pretty close to getting it up through where the seat pan is. There is the fuel tank. Let me set it up and we'll take a bit of a peek at it here and see what we got to work with. Well, I think my hopes are dashed about reusing this tank. It's just about had it. Like, I am putting my thumb through the front of it here. Definitely, you can see this is pretty bad. Yeah, see? Big chunks of it. You can kind of see the sump in there though. So I think we're gonna have to write this tank off, which doesn't really surprise me. I could probably plastic weld a bit of a patch on here, but you start getting beyond fixing a seam and it starts to reach a point of what I call diminishing returns. Tanks are available, we may as well take advantage of it. So I think that is going to end that little part of the job. And I think we're going to call it for an evening here. We're starting to lose daylight. But I'll be back at this before the video is done. We're going to restring the fuel line so that it comes out in the proper spot and goes up to the fuel shutoff valve, which is under the hood here. And our fuel line is going to come up. This is the other end of it. It'll come up to this little shutoff. Ooh, that fell apart. Which isn't surprising. I just had it kind of wedged on there. But allowed us to test run the engine, and I think we've got a good running machine here if we can get this fuel system sorted out. Well guys, I'll bring you back probably tomorrow evening. We'll work on this some more. Hey guys, for you it's been a few seconds, but for me it's been 4 or 5 days since I was working on my 1987 Argo Magnum. Look what showed up. That's incredibly fast shipping here in Canada. I know down in the US everybody's spoiled by Amazon Prime 2-day shipping, but around here 4 days to get a big package like that in the mail is pretty quick. Well, let's continue on getting the fuel system put back together. We got a tank to install, obviously. We got some fuel line to run, and see if this thing's going to run on its own. Since we've got the seat out of here, why don't we take the vacuum cleaner and just kind of clean up a little bit. I think this machine's going to need a bath with a pressure washer, get all the grungy stuff out of the belly pan. But for now, that gets us at least a little bit cleaned up. Gets the top layer off. This fuel tank I got from Argo Parts Canada. Being in Canada, that's just a convenient place to get parts from, and the price seemed reasonable. It's a roto-molded fuel tank, meaning they've got a plastic, or they've got like a metal case that looks kind of like this tank on the inside, and they fill it full of a plastic powder, put it in an oven, rotate it in all sorts of angles, and the powdered plastic melts to the outside of the metal case and creates the tank. Fairly interesting system. I've seen a place that made septic tanks that way. It was kind of interesting. We've got a kind of a sump in the bottom of the tank. It's designed to fit down around the seat, and we've got the pickup and the pickup tube that goes down into the bottom of that sump. Now, based on how I got the old one out of there, I think the easiest way to put it in is to drop it down. Well, that was fairly easy. It's not completely in place yet, but it's kind of in where it's supposed to be. I'm sure it is absolutely terrible lighting, but the next thing we got to do is we got to get the filler hose hooked up to the tank, and that was a bit of a challenge getting it out of there. or getting it off of the old tank. So getting this hooked back up, I'm expecting is not going to be super easy. Something tells me the way that this is put together is the fuel tank gets put in before they put the top cap on. I really don't want to take the top cap off at this time. In the future, maybe, if this thing gets a complete rebuild or something. But for now, I would just like to get things back together. That went pretty easy. That dropped in, actually I'm pretty impressed with how easy that dropped in. Appears to be in place. The ribs on the bottom of the tank appear to be sitting on the rails. I think we're in good shape. Now we need to get some fuel line hooked up. This could be interesting. We've got to fish the fuel line all the way through the rail and up to the engine. Fortunately, the original line's still in place, and we might be able to get away with taping the two together and pulling them through that way. Let me get some tape and we'll see if we can make that happen. First thing we need to do is get the fuel line from the outlet of the tank back to where it would head up into the fender well of the machine. This is supposedly PVC fuel hose, so hopefully it's going to stand up to whatever's in the gas these days. I got 5/16. I think that's a suitable size. As longtime viewers of the channel probably realize, I really don't like worm gear clamps. I use the one down on the filler neck because A, that's what was there, and B, that's I don't have any ear clamps that size. But for smaller fuel hose like this, I really prefer to use an ear clamp. To put the hose on the barb, it's a nicer finish. It does a better job of clamping, and then you don't have that razor sharp tang sticking out of the ear clamp. So we'll use these. There's different styles. This particular one is designed for PEX tubing for either radiant in-floor heating or water lines, that kind of thing. But it should do the job. Use straight cutters as opposed to diagonal cutters or side cutters to squash this down. Why is that being a challenge? Let me go around the other side so I'm not tripping over you guys, and I'll get that hose clamped down where it's supposed to be. That seems to have a good hold. That's probably a little bit small line for those for that size of ear clamp. I'm going to go see if I can come up with a little bit better size. I've got several of them in my bins, and that's what we'll use on the rest of this. I've taped up the new fuel line to the old one. I did it around just in this localized area, and then to add a little bit of strength so we got something to pull against, I put a lengthwise strip on as well. Hopefully that'll do the job for us. I'm going to put a fuel filter in here at the tank, and you've got to look carefully at the end of the in and out cast into the where are we here? There we are. Out is cast into the body of the filter, and you want to make sure that we've got it going in the right direction. Now I do have a pair of nice hose cutters someplace. The messy garage is biting me again. I can't find them. This is the other style of ear clamp that I like to use, and has dual ears, and it is a solid metal. I don't know if this is going to fit over top of this filter. So in it's gonna go, I think. There we are. A little squeeze on either ear. And that has that mounted in there. Now the big problem with the ear clamps as opposed to a worm ear clamp is they're not reusable. But how often do you actually end up reusing worm ear clamps anyways? Usually they rust out and they end up going in the garbage. Here we are, filtered fuel. Tuck that up in underneath. Keep the sun from landing on it. And that has everything hooked up here at the back. This is our fuel line coming up from the tank. And there was a filter on this end as well, but I think that might have just been something that got added later because the previous owner was having running issues. And that is a nice little shutoff valve. I put a spacer hose on here so that I could run a 3/8 on a 5/16 or 1/4 inch barb. Slide our ear clamp on. This is a little bit bigger size. Goes on. It is loose, the 5/16 on the 1/4 inch, but by crimping down on this hose clamp, you know, I think I'm going to run the smaller one. That just fits on there, and with having this hose being slightly larger than the barb fitting, being able to squash down on that little extra is good. Now that's a nice solid, that hose does not want to spin on that fitting. And this is a piece of the hose that I cut off of the other end, and as you can see, it is completely rotten. The inner core is kind of collapsed away from the outer braid, and that is absolute garbage. We've still got one, and this seems like fairly new hose, but you know what? We've got some extras. Let's replace it. The fuel pump doesn't smell too bad, but of course I've been running this this motor using the boat tank, so it's not surprising that the fuel doesn't smell too bad. And this is one of those stainless ones, but again, it's next size down. Hopefully I can get on here and get it in place. That has us connected. Well, I guess we need to put a little bit of fuel in the tank. See what's going to happen here. Let me grab a can and I'll be right back. I've dumped about half a tank of gas in it. I've had a partial jerry can of gas kicking around, so I've dumped the remainder of that into the fuel tank. Let's see if this thing's going to go. We've got our choke on, fuel is on. Let's see what it does. Probably is a little bit of fuel in the float bowl of the carburetor, so it might start and fire, but I expect we're going to have to turn it over quite a bit to suck fuel up out of the tank. A little bit of smokies. Nothing in the fuel filter yet. And it still doesn't look like there's anything coming up. So I'm going to guess that we're going to have to put a little bit of air pressure into this tank to force fuel up into this filter and then all the way up to the engine. Well, we can try the little Harbor Freight tire inflator and see if that gives us enough PSI. I find a rag seems to work best for pressurizing a fuel tank when you're using the air hose. I don't have a rag handy, but I do happen to have a bit of a dirty old utility or dirty old work glove that we can kind of use that way. We'll stick the Schrader fill port in there and push that down into the neck. See if we can get some pressure going here. And you can probably see we got a little bit of a drip happening too. We'll that's at the outlet of the tank. I don't know if it's that the fitting isn't quite tight or if it's our line on that barb that I wasn't real happy with how that clamp went down. So let's see if we can get this thing running and then we'll address that problem. I think I'm going to grab some two-stroke fuel. We'll dump that down the carburetor. I don't really want to use ether. Kind of hard on the rings. And this thing runs so well, we don't want to be doing that. So we'll dump a little two-stroke down the throat of the carburetor and we'll see if that'll get it to fire. I have a sneaking suspicion that the fuel pump is going to do a lot better if the engine's actually running as opposed to turning over on the starter. It is definitely pulling fuel through the filter, but I don't think it's all the way up yet. I think we can safely say that that was running under its own steam. And yeah, that idle is pretty low, but I think there's a reason for that. I think it's set up that way so that the clutch doesn't engage and create a bunch of gear grinding when you're shifting from neutral to reverse, low or high. Well, I think that seems to run pretty good. Well guys, I think we're gonna call that a win. Definitely runs well. As you can see, hopefully the camera wasn't pointing off into La La Land too badly. Thing runs great, drives great. It starts good now that we've got the fuel system primed, and with the new fuel tank nice and clean, hopefully we can keep this thing going. I was really tempted to load it on the trailer and take it down to the end of the block and try and put it in the water, but I think there's a little bit of maintenance needs to happen to this thing before we get too carried away taking it anywhere other than just a lap or two around the yard. Chains need to be lubricated, bearings need to be pumped full of grease, everything needs to be gone over. Basically a routine service is what this thing needs. That's going to be the content for another video. Thanks a lot for stopping by. If you got this far, can you give me one of those thumb up? Give me a like, please. And if you haven't already done so, why don't you consider subscribing to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and it certainly helps me get more views on my videos. Be sure to check back for more content on this Argo, the other Argo, the Trackster, all these off-road vehicles that I've got. I got some ideas once I get the garage functional of some things that I want to do, and that should make for some good videos. We'll catch you guys in the next mess. Thanks for watching.